Okay, hey guys, so this is the second part of the custom chest tutorial using Minecraft 1.6.2 and the Minecraft Forge API. So we're going to do the custom chest again. I thought I was going to try and split this in between two videos equally, but it looks as if I've left a bit more for this video, so this might be a little bit longer than the first one. So if you remember, our custom chest is going to be, size of a normal chest in block terms, but it's going to have like a full double chest for that. So last time we did most of the block. We've got one more thing to do. We did the GUI container class and the handler for the open the GUI. There's a lot of errors here, and that's just because we haven't done the things we're going to do this tutorial. So we're going to do the container for the custom chest, so all the slots, and the tile entity, which is all the kind of meat behind it. Okay, so let's go for this then. So the only thing we need to do in the block class is now we need to tell the block what happens when we break the chest. So usually when you break a block, all that happens is the block gets broken, you get it back. Now when you've got a chest, you've got stuff in it, so you don't want to lose that stuff when you break it. So we need to make a method called break block. It's a public void method, so break block. It's failing at typing here, so it takes a world. Wow. We've got the three ints as usual, int x, int y, and int z for the position. We've also got another two parameters that never get used really. The fifth one is probably metadata again. No idea what the sixth one is, never used it, and never needed to know what it is. Okay, so we're going to tell it to spew out all the stuff. Now, we're going to spew it out so that you can see it all. And basically this code is mainly taken from the vanilla Minecraft chest and all that kind of stuff. So it's quite self-explanatory, but I'll go through it anyway. So we need a random, just so that it's not all kind of uniform. And you get that with new random. Might have to import... No, we don't have to import random, what we're saying. Now we need to do as we did last time and get the tile entity of the current block. So I'm going to call it T. And if you remember from last time, it's world.getBlock tile entity. And this is definitely, there we go. And then you give it X, Y, and Z. So this tests if the block, this takes the tile entity from the block you're looking at. Okay, so now we want to check if it's not an instance of an inventory. So if it's not an instance of inventory, we don't want to do anything because there's nothing to do. So if not, so you can do that for not in Java if this looks a bit strange, but T, and then we want to check if it's an instance of inventory. So instance of is last time, inventory. So if it's an inventory, sorry, if it's not an inventory, we need to return. Now return just in a void method just gets out of it. So that's all that does. Okay, so now we need to make it an inventory from this tile entity. So we're just going to make it an inventory, and let's call it inventory. And then we want to cast our tile entity to inventory with our casting operation in brackets. This is so that this tile entity now is an object of type inventory, so it means we can get to all the stuff that the inventory class holds. So now what we want to do is we want to loop round all of the items in the inventory and spew them out. So this is a loop, so it's going to be a for loop. I'm going to go for I equals 0, I is less than, and now inventory has a method called get size inventory, sorry, there we are. And that's the size of the current inventory, so that's how many slots are on in it. I want to add one onto I each time. So inside this loop, we're going to spew out all the items. So first, we need to get the item stack that's in the slot. Item stack, let's just call it item stack equals, and then we want inventory dot get stack in slot. And get stack in slot takes whatever number you give it and gets whatever stacks in that number of slots. So stack slot I, because we're incrementing I each time, so that's the most kind of useful thing to do. Now what we need to do is we need to check if this is null. We need to check that if this is not null, we need to make sure that there is an item if there's a stack in here. So if item stack is not equal to null, and double and operator, item stack dot stack size, come on, is greater than 0. So this is if, what did I do there? If the item stack is not equal to null, i.e. if it's there, and if the stack size is greater than 0, then we want to continue. So now we want to kind of, the way I see these is kind of spew factors, and this is a random way for them to go. So I'm going to call them float. They're floats anyway, and we need one for x, one for y, and one for z, and they're basically the same, but we need to do it 3 times because you want a different random number each time. So I'm going to call it, let's say x2, and we want to get, what have I called, random, and then we want to get the next float from there. And from vanilla Minecraft code, I've taken this, you times it by 0.8, and you want to add 0.1. These have got to be floats. 0.1f. So that's our x2. So I'm going to copy this another twice, and this will error for a wee second. This is going to be y2, and this is going to be z2. These are all the same. It's just a way to randomly kind of spew them out, is the way I see it. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create an entity item in the world, and this is an entity item is basically the little bobbin icon that you see that you pick up. So I'm going to call it entity item, and it's a new entity item because we're just creating one. And you want to give it the world. You want to give it its x, y, and z position. So I'm going to do x plus x2 because I want to add on. Oops, what's going on here? Y plus y2 and z plus z2. So this is the position. So we're just going to move the positions about, and these are random numbers, remember. So all these will go different places. Have I imported the entity item? Have I? Must have. Something's wrong up here. Oh, I haven't put a comma. Problem. So here we go. Now we can actually import it. So strange. Okay, there we go. What's wrong with this as well? Something else is wrong. Random. Okay, I knew we had to import random, but it was another error that was stopping that from happening. Okay, so now I've put the item into x plus x2, y plus y2, and z plus z2, which is just a kind of random location. Actually, there's more to go in that. I was too busy explaining that. So let's bring this down, and we need to put a new item stack in here because the entity item needs an item stack to take, and we need to get the item ID of the item stack that we're looking at. So that's the item stack that we've got up here. So this is this ith element. So it's the item ID of that. We then need the stack size of that. So it's item stack size. And then also it could be something that has damage. So we need to get the item damage, item stack.get item damage. And that's in case it's some kind of tool that has a damage. You don't want it to reinvigorate itself when it comes out of the chest. Okay, the only other thing we have to do is a couple of things. Well, the next really is something to do with the NBT tag compounds, and that's just a way of storing information about the world and stuff, and we'll see more of that in the tile entity. But for now, I'm just going to put this bit in for the block, but we're wanting to know if the item stack has a tag compound. So it's called has tag compound, and this just asks if it has one. Then if you want to do this, if it has one, you want to set the tag compound to a copy of itself. And this is just taken from vanilla Minecraft code, and I don't want to touch it just in case something happens. Something is horribly wrong if that happens, I guess. So we need to get the entity item from entity item, which seems a little bit strange, but that's just the way it's set up. You want to set the tag compound, and we want to take an NTB tag compound. So we're going to need to cast this to NBT tag compound, and that's the name of the kind of information that you get, and you want to get the item. Sorry, why have I called it anything item? No, item stack dot. Yeah, actually, I'm confusing myself. Entity item and item stack are completely different things. Entity item is the thing on the ground. Item stack is the thing that you're taking out of the inventory. So you need to set the tag compound of the thing in the inventory to be the thing on the ground, because you don't want to lose the information. You learn something new every time you do something like this. So you don't want to actually set it to the actual tag compound. So you want to get the tag compound of this and copy it. So you can just do dot copy. There we go. Okay, and the only thing we're going to do is import this NVT tag compound. So this is just making sure that you don't lose any information from the item kind of bursting out of the chest to the item being on the ground, so you can pick it up again and it'll still have the same amount of information. Okay, that's that bit. So the next thing, all we have to do is set the item 3, basically. That sounds a bit strange, but that's basically what it is. So the float factor is just a factor you add on to some random numbers. Not add on, you times it on. So I'm going to 0.05, and I guess that's to keep them small. Yet again, that's taken directly from vanilla Minecraft code. Now we need to set the entity item motion values. So there's a motion X, motion Y, and motion Z. So if I see this, here you go, there's motion X, motion Y, and motion Z. So we need to do this for 3 of them. There's a slight difference to the Y one, but it goes in the general form of you want to get a Gaussian from the random variable, and a Gaussian is just a kind of a random floating point number. It's used quite a lot in artificial intelligence and stuff like that. We want to times that by the factor. Okay, and there we go. So that's the motion X. I'm going to copy this again and change motion X these 2 times to Z and capital Y. The only thing I'm going to do with the Y is I'm going to add another 0.2 on, and that's simply because that's the way it is in normal Minecraft and it looks nice. And feel free to mess about with that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep the normal Minecraft stuff. After we've got all of the motion values, then all we want to do is spawn it in. So world.spawn entity in world, and then you give it the entity item, and that will take the entity item and all these attributes we've just set up and spawn it into the world. And then we want to set the stack size of the item that we've taken out to 0, because we don't want it to be in the inventory anymore. And that is us. That's that method done. So you might have to go over this a couple of times to understand what this is doing. But the only kind of confusing part I would think is the NBT tag compound stuff, and just think of it as information that you want to transfer over from this item stack that you've got in the inventory to the entity item which is on the ground. Okay, so that's the block custom chest finished. So we've got the whole block now. Now we have to create the container. The container goes in our container custom chest class, and this is the thing that binds our inventory and the stuff in the tile entity to slots that are on the page. So this is the containers, basically what puts the slots in front of this PNG image that right now is just an image. It doesn't do anything. So let's get on with this. Time's a wasting. Just checking the time on the video here, just make sure I'm kind of going in time. Okay, so call it whatever, just make sure that you call it what you called it in here, and I think in here, yeah, just so it's the same name, don't want to have any rogue names out of there. And this class is going to extend container, vanilla Minecraft class called container. Make sure that when you're importing this you don't do the first one, because that java.awt container is something to do with making GUIs in Java, not in Minecraft. This will moan about stuff that I'm not going to add, but I'm going to add them now. Well, in the course of this. So this needs a couple of things. So we need a protected tile entity. and it's actually a tile entity custom chest, so it's our own tile entity. I'm going to call it T, and that shouldn't error because it doesn't matter if it's not a tile entity yet. Then I'm going to have a private integer, and I'm going to call it slot count. I'm going to set it to 0 initially. That's just so that I can name my slots for my in my tile entity different numbers, because you can do all the sorts of things that the vanilla Minecraft code has done, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I've found that going up linearly is just easy, and it saves you having to think about it, because if you do the same number for 2 different slots, if you put an item in one of the slots, it's going to go into the other one. It's going to show up. It won't actually duplicate the item. It will just show you the picture in 2 of them, and then you can take it out of any of them, and it will just take them out because the stack's only size 1, and it's the same item. So it just looks stupid when that happens, really. So you want to avoid that. Okay, so we need a constructor for this class. A container custom chest, and this constructor takes an inventory player. Let's call it inv, and it takes our tile entity custom chest. I'm going to call it T as well, and I'm going to have to import inventory player. Won't have to import tile entity custom chest because it's in the same package. Has that got rid of that? Yes, it has. Excellent. There's still an error on that. There's not an error, it's just telling me there's an error. Okay, anyway, I'll need to save that first one. There we go. Okay, so we need to set up our tile entity from our protected variable to be the tile entity we pass in. You can't just do t equals t. If it was a different name, that would be fine, but if they're the same name, Java do this.t, and that actually means this one here. This.t is this thing, and then this t here, I'm saying this too much, is this one here. So you're setting this to this there. Yeah, I just happen to call them the same thing. Now what we need to do is we need to go around our container and add our slots in. So we need to say, well, I want to add slots in here, here, here. So you want to go for 6 rows and for 9 slots. So this is where you look at your image. So we've got 6 rows and 9 slots. So you need the outer loop. There's going to be an outer loop and an inner loop. The outer loop goes around 6 times. The inner loop goes around 9 times. So let's go for that. For int I equals 0. I is less than 6, so that'll go from 0 to 6. 0 to 5, sorry, which is 6 iterations, and we're going to add on to I each time. Inside that we're going to have another loop, and I'm going to use J for this one. And this goes around 9 times, so it's 0 to 9, 0 to 8. And then for that, all we want to do is add our slot. Now, the method is called add slot to container, and this takes a slot, and we don't have a slot, so we need to create a slot. Slot's sounding really weird now that I'm saying this hundreds of times, and the slot will take certain things. So it takes the inventory it's got to go into, which is T. It then takes an ID, and this is where the slot count comes in handy, because you can do all sorts of fancy stuff, which we'll see when we do the Minecraft inventory in the hotbar. I'm just going to do slot count, and after that, after it's done it, I'm going to plus on the end, which increments it after it's done. So it uses slot count and then increments it afterwards, so it'll give you 0, and then it'll increment it automatically, you don't have to do it. Then the only 2 other things it takes is the X and the Y position of the slot. So if you're using a generic Minecraft image, you'll see that the slots start 8 pixels over. I'm not over enough. There we go, 8 pixels over. And they start, how many pixels down is that? That's 16, is it? It might actually start. Yeah, 16. Sorry, 17. I wrote those numbers down just to make sure. The slots start slightly lower than the actual picture does. So you go 8 in and 17 down to start off. So that's the starting positions of X and Y. But we need to then increment it each time. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our number of J and a number of I to make sure that this is okay. So the first thing is the X position. So I'm going to do 8 plus, and then you want the number of the slot along the line times the width of the slot, and the width of the normal slot in Minecraft is 18. If you've got your own image, make sure that you check what size these slots are that you want to put in. These slots are 18 wide, so that's where this 18 number comes from. And J, if it's 0, it'll put it here, because 0 times J is 0, and then 18 over, so it goes along each time. So that's fine. Now we need the Y value, and it starts at 17, as I said a minute ago. And then you want the I value, because you want to go down the way for your eyes. I times 18, because it's a square slot. We're going to need to import slot here. And there we go. So you've got a slot. What are we doing here? Slot in constructor slot tile entity chest int is not available. Have I missed something out? I don't believe I've missed anything out. That's quite a strange error. Okay, I will be back in a second when I work out what's wrong with this. Okay, I've worked it out. It's just because this this TE here, isn't actually a tile entity yet, because we haven't done that, so it's going to error until we've finished that. That was quite strange for a minute. Okay, so that's right, what we've just done here. And now after this loop, after these two loops, all we need to do is put the inventory in. Now I'm going to put this in a different slot, a different function, because I want to keep the code for our tile entity. So our tile entity, this two loops is going to fill up these slots here in the image. Minecraft has the code already to do that, and that's what I'm going to show you in a minute, but I'm going to keep that separate so that, in case, I wanted to change this, or anybody else wanted to change this, it's easy to know where to go, instead of looking at 3 loops and finding out, well, what one is it. So what I'm going to do is fill inventory or something. Yeah, fill inventory, and I'm going to give it inv, that letter for a minute until we do it. So we're going to do the inventory in a wee second, but first I'm going to make sure that this container custom chest is going to stop complaining, and I'm going to put the method in that it wants. It wants a method called can interact with, and that's just asking if the player can interact with this container. And in here I'm just going to return t.is usable by player. So this is a method we're going to do in the tile entity, and it's just going to tell us whether the player is allowed to do anything with this, and of course it's going to make sure that they're close enough to the chest and stuff like that. So let's see if I can import that. That's going to now error because we don't have a method in there yet, but that's the story of our journey to make a custom chest so far, as dealing with errors until we get rid of them. Okay, so let's go for this this method. I'm going to make it protected so that so you can't get to it outside my own package, but you can get to it inside. I'm not sure we'd ever need to get to it inside. Bind, what am I doing? I'm thinking of the description for the method that I'm going to do, and it binds the inventory to it, but fill inv, and I want to give it an inventory player. I'm going to call it inv as well, just so that it's kind of consistent. Okay, let's move this down a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is the same kind of thing that we did up with the two loops here. So we need to do a similar thing. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 3, because there's 3 rows in the inventory. We're just doing the inventory, we're leaving out the hotbar. And inside there we're going to do for int j equals 0. Oh, what's this bad? J is less than 9 because there's 9 slots. J++. And then here we're going to do our add slot to container yet again, as usual. Add slot to container. And then we're going to do a new slot. Oops. It goes in the inv, which is the player inventory. We're going to give it Minecraft code. Now this is going to look a bit strange, but j plus I times 9 plus 9, and I just took that straight from the Minecraft code. That will give it a number between 9, because j plus I times 9, when they're both 0, plus 9 will be 9, and whatever the number that the inventory goes up to. So that's the ID of that. And then we want the x and y position, so 8 is what it goes in as usual, and j times 18. And then if you go to your image, you'll see that if you take the distance from the top of the image down, it's 139 to the very top of the image there. So it's going to be 139 plus I times 18, and that will get you the position of the slot in the container. And then we want to exit out both these loops, and now we want to do the hotbar. So the reason we're not doing the hotbar in the same loop is because there's a space between the slots that are in the inventory and the slots that are in the hotbar, so it'd be kind of silly to do it there, because you'd have to do all sorts of extra checking to make sure that it was in the right position. So I'm just going to do a simple loop. Again, I can use I again, because I've already closed the scope, so the scope of this I here is to this block here, so I'm allowed to use I again. But you can't use I in here, because that will be two variables with the same name. That won't work. What was I doing? I've lost what I was doing. 9, because there's 9 slots, and we only need one loop here because there's only one row and there's 9 columns to this. So yet again, I guess add slot to container, and we're going to add a new slot. We're going to go for inv. This is just going to be I, so this will give you the number between 0 and 8, which is the numbers before this container. Now, I know that my tile entity will have numbers between 0 and 8 as well, but it doesn't matter because they're separate inventories. If I was to go for 0 for both of these loops, it would clash and you'd get things going in the same number. We're going to do our x position again, 8 plus I times 18, and then the y value we'll say the same because it's only one row, so we've got 197. That's what I've got for the value in my image. That if you go down here, and let's take that there, we've got 197 to the hotbar. That's what it is. If your hotbar is different, then you'll need to change this value. Okay. Right, so we have one more thing to do in this container class, and then we get to go into our tile entity. And as I see, we're already quite near half an hour, so this is going to be a long video, but I said I was going to do it in 2, and 2 is probably enough for this. More than fault, I should have put probably the bit about the block in the video before. But we'll keep going. Okay, so this is going to be the method that deals with the merging the item stacks when you shift click and stuff like that. This is the kind of, I would say, most confusing method of this, because there's a few numbers that really just are stuck in there, and if you don't know what they mean, it's quite hard to work it out. So it's a public method. The item stack is returned from it, and it's called transfer stack and slot. This takes a player, an entity player, and it takes a number of the slot. Okay, so I'll need to import item stack here. Done. Okay, so I'm going to make an item stack to begin with, and this is so that we can return it later on. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to get the slot from which we're trying to move from. So I'm going to call it a slot. I can't call it slot, let's call it slot object. And want to cast this to a slot, and the inventory slots is a kind of defined thing in the superclass of this, so the container class, inventory slots. And this has a get method, and you just give it a number. So we're going to give it a slot. Okay, so this gets the slot that we're looking for based on the number of the slot that we've given to the function. So we're going to test if this is not null. So if slot and object is not equal to null, and then here we're going to make sure that the slot object can be a stack. So there's a method called getHasStack, and this makes sure that there's a stackable thing. We need an item stack, which is a stack inside the slot. Let's call it slot stack. Yeah. And then we're going to get slot object. I can't talk anymore. Get stack. Okay, there we are. So now what we want to do is we want to get the stack that's in the slot, and we want to put it into stack. So I'm going to copy this, and this is just so we can return this after, because this method wants an item stack, and it's the item stack that you were dealing with, and I guess it uses it somewhere else. So we need to copy this stack so that we can return it later on, after we've done everything else we need to do. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure which how will I say this? Which inventory we're moving to. So we need to know if we're moving to the inventory or if we're moving to the tile entity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the slot object. This has a thing called inventory in it. There we are. And this is just the inventory. And now I'm going to check if this is an instance of my own tile entity. Instance of tile entity custom chest. And this is going to error because tile entity custom chest is not oh no, it won't. Excellent. I don't know why that's not. Because I haven't fixed this error, so it won't see this error next. It will error later on. So if this inventory here is our tile entity, then we want to put it in the inventory, so the 3 bars or the hotbar at the bottom. So we want to merge the item stack now. We want to make sure that this does not return null. So I'm going to say this, if not this, dot merge item stack, and this is a method that merges stacks together. The first thing is the stack that we want to do. So this is slot stack. The second parameter is the first slot which it can be put into, and this takes the number of the slot from 0 to whatever it is. Now there's 0 to 53, so there's 54 slots in my chest tile entity, so I want to start at 54. So that says you can put it in 54, and then the last one it can put it in is 90, because 54 plus 20, whatever it ends at 90. You just count how many slots you've got, and then that's you. And then the fourth parameter is whether it should be putting it in backwards or forwards. Now we want this to be true because it can go in backwards. So you know how when you shift click an item it goes into the last slot in your hotbar if it can? This true does that. Nope, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be returning null if that's false. So this is saying that if this thing, you're doing this here anyway, but if this doesn't work, then you want to return null and say, well, it didn't work. Okay. Yeah, that looks like that. So that means that if it's a tile entity, we'll put it into the inventory. So now we need to go out of the 2 if statements, and let's go for else if, and we want to say so now we know that it's the actual inventory, and we want to put it into the tile entity. So we can just do this dot merge stack and put it in here. So now we want to put our slot stack again. We want to put it into the tile entity, so it's between 0 and 53. So you see there's a kind of linear thing, but it's backwards the way we've done it. You could do it the other way if you wanted to. We don't want it to, oops, and in the chest we don't want it to put it in backwards, because that would be silly. Let's just put it into the front of the chest, and if that doesn't work, you want to return null. So you can see here we're saying, is it part of our chest, or we want to put it into the inventory, test if it goes into the inventory, return null if it doesn't, but it will do it if it works. Otherwise we know we want to put it into the actual chest that we've created, so we want to put it in there. So return null if that's okay. Now we want to make sure there's a couple of things we need to make sure. So I want to make sure that the stack size of this thing that we're putting in is not equal to 0. I've missed out something. I need to put stack size. So if the slot stack, which is an item stack dot the stack size, so the size of the stack is equal to 0, then inside this slot we want to put stack null. Because we don't want anything to remain in the slot because we've run out of items. If that's not the case, we want to call something that Minecraft Vanilla has, slot object dot on slot changed, and this just does the vanilla Minecraft thing for when a slot is taken out of. I don't know what the code is like because I've not looked at that bit, but that's what that does. Okay, and the only other thing we need to do is we need to make sure that the stack size of our stack in the slot is not the same as the stack. Yet again, this is taking code directly from the vanilla Minecraft, so some of it is a little bit strange because it's just something that you wouldn't really think of. Stack size, and I've missed out the stack size for the first one yet again. So if our slot stack is the same as that, then we just want to return null. I have no idea why that's the case. It's just that's how it works in Minecraft, and we'll just deal with that. So, and then the last thing we need to do is we need to call a method of the slot object, and it's something that slob object slot object, and it's called on pickup from slot, and this is what Minecraft does when you pick up an item from a slot. We don't have to deal with that. We give it the player, which is called player, and we also give it the stack which we want, which is called the slot stack, and that's the stack that we got from the slot that we created, well, the slot that we wanted based on this number up here. Exit out of this kind of big if statement, and then the thing we need to do is we need to return the stack, and that's the thing that we copied earlier on here. We copied it into there just so we can return it, and that's what you want. That thing still didn't error. That's amazing. Okay.